Hi, Lydia. Welcome to the Integrative Health Coach Success Podcast.
Thank you, Julia. Happy to be here.
Yes, I'm so excited to have you. I can't wait to kind of dive into a little bit of our topic of the day as far as our conversation is going to lead us. What I would love for you to do to start is, could you share with our listeners a little bit about what you're currently doing with your IHP certification?
Yeah. So I am not currently coaching anyone, but I am definitely using everything that I've learned in the IHP program in so many ways. So I currently work at a women's health startup and I manage all of their content. We do a podcast and I do their email, social, that sort of thing. So it's really fun and creative. And before that, I was working at a startup based on sustainability and environmentalism, and even used my IHP education there. So I joined IHP back in 2018. It was like the second cohort. The certification had just launched, and I had just had my 19th birthday. I was sort of at a crossroads. I did 2 years of community college and studied all of the things that I was interested in. I didn't really have any direction. So I just took writing classes and psychology and philosophy and astronomy, like all of these random things. And then it was time for me to actually pick a major and pick a direction. And I was like, I don't really know what I want to do. And right around that time, I learned about Stephen Cabral and the work that he was doing through Melissa Ambrosini. She has a really good working relationship with Stephen Cabral, and I love everything that they do together. And I just really resonated with what Stephen was creating. So instead of pursuing a degree, I decided to sign up for IHP, and it was everything that I was hoping to get out of an educational offering, because it was just so wide ranging and really catered to a lot of my curiosities. And I used like the toxin training in my environmental work, and of course, using all of the education around like everything in the women's health work that I do now. And it's also been so formative in my own journey, and it just really shaped the way that I think about everything. I really got this understanding of thinking in terms of systems. That was probably the biggest takeaway and the most valuable thing that I got from the program. Our body is a system. The world, like nature works in systems. And I think with that perspective, you can understand a lot about the world. And so, I'm using it in my work, but also just in my life, and so grateful.
Yeah. And sometimes it can allow you to see like, okay, this is where my passion really lies, right? Like when you kind of dig a little bit as to kind of where you feel like your heart might be in, then you can kind of get a little bit deeper. And so many other coaches have gone on to do other certifications, or they've gone in this direction. But I've also interviewed some people who were thinking like, oh, I really want to be like a functional medicine doctor. And they realized like what that entailed. And they wanted like the numbers, the letters after their name. And they realized like, but IHP gives me the flexibility to work from wherever I want. And it's actually a far better, accumulation of knowledge than some other program that I would have done. Right. And so sometimes we can kind of get caught up in like what we think we should be doing versus what really aligns and like feels good. And it's just always like peeling back the onion, right? Like when you get a little bit of a taste for something that you love, then like it's the next thing. And you can kind of just keep refining from there. And have it be the process of just learning and educating yourself, even if you don't bring it to a coaching sense, right? Working within, I think it's great for IHPs to know that, yes, you don't maybe have to be in a coaching realm. We've interviewed Kate Mills on the podcast, who she talks a lot about how there's the need for, which it sounds like what you're doing right now, for people who have the knowledge that we have to be running, whether it be social media or emails or creating content. Not everybody is a, coach or wants to be client facing one-on-one with people every single day. And so it's good to know that there's other options. Are you loving what you're doing right now?
Yeah, definitely. And you mentioned the letters after the name, which is really funny. A couple of months ago, I went to this yoga retreat with this couple that I really admire. They've impacted me in such an incredible way. And the guy, he gave this wonderful talk, and he was like, yeah, I don't have any letters after my name. And it's like, oh, this brilliant man who I like look up to so much and like feel so enriched by, he doesn't have a degree in any of this stuff. Like, it was really just his curiosity and his passion for all of these things. And that you can really feel that. And I think there's just like a deeper sense of connection to other people where you can really sense like, oh, they didn't get a degree because their mom told them to, or, and there's a lot of different like things to be sensitive about in those ways. Yeah, not to judge anyone's journey, but I think it's really powerful to really honor your curiosity.
Yes. Yeah, because and I think like a lot of people go to school and they work really hard and learn a lot of things for the letters that they have after their name. And it's absolutely amazing, right? If that's truly your passion and what you want to do. But when it's done just out of like formality of like, now I need to go to school. Again, people have heard this story, but I wanted to be a hairdresser. I worked in my aunt's hair salon at a young age. I wanted to be a hairdresser. So my mom was like, cool, you can be a hairdresser, but I want you to go to school so that you can like do business courses and you can own the hair salon. So I was like, oh, okay, good parenting, right? Like, but now I can look back on it and see it differently. I truly just wanted to help people and kind of be in this one-on-one connective type of environment, right? I saw my aunt, like people came in and they left feeling better. She had great connection, great relationships. And I went to college and I was like, actually, I don't want to study business. I'm not a business owner. I don't want to do that. So like, what else do I want to do? And I ended up choosing criminal justice. Okay. But so I still left with a criminal justice degree and realized this is not fulfilling like my true desire of wanting to be in some sort of relationship connected type of atmosphere for my work. It's just how I feel best. So anyways, it was kind of, sorry, Mom, but like a waste of a lot of money. Maybe it led me to doing this and maybe not hairdressing, but I think it's so important and it's rare. I think, you were 19 and you kind of could see, the forest through the trees, but I think that's rare. I think a lot of young men and women at that age, it's hard for them to kind of see and like tease out like, wait a minute, this doesn't feel aligned. They're just kind of doing the next step. People can do that their whole lives really and never see that that's what they're doing. So that's amazing that you were kind of able to see that. Where do you kind of see yourself growing? It seems like you kind of have this beautiful, like, thought process of kind of maybe where the trajectory is going. Do you see yourself stepping into coaching? Do you kind of see yourself kind of staying in a similar role to where you're at now?
Thank you for asking this question. I definitely see myself stepping into, some sort of coaching, facilitating role. And, it's funny. The brand marketing, just marketing path in general there's a lot of safety in that even. And I kind of just like accidentally ended up in it. And I'm so grateful. And I have learned so much in those spaces too, that I think I will apply in future, projects and offerings. But big vision is, I want to have my own podcast, which I did launch, and I only did 2 episodes, and then I had to pause and be like, whoa, there's like some perfectionism here, and like what were my true intentions in there. I realized that there was a lot of ego driving that. And so I was like, pause. We're going to go unpack this a little bit, and then we're going to revisit, which I'm sort of in the process of doing now. So podcast is one piece of a much bigger vision. I definitely want to lead group coaching programs. I think there's so much value and healing that can happen in community. And you mentioned connection. We always feel better when we go to the hairdresser, and it's not just because of these like outside changes. Like we go to that chair and, you know, depending on the hairdresser, I'm sure your aunt was amazing at this. But you go and it's just an opportunity to feel really heard and seen and connected. And, yeah, I think about the way or the direction that the world is moving. Like we're all thinking about AI and the implications of that. And I think connection actually is something that will become more and more valuable. And that is one reason why coaching is actually such an important what's the word? I don't want to say role, but just like kind of profession to have growing, because the world is moving. The world is moving in a direction, and I think the coaching world is kind of like inching it back to what we really need.
Yeah, I agree. And having, coached for almost 15 years, most people end up saying like, not necessarily the information is what they've been looking for, but simply being heard, seen, having a quote health professional take more than 15 minutes to just like listen to them, ask questions that they've never been asked before. What is your stress like? What was your childhood like? What's your sleep like? Right? Like these are questions that don't get asked when somebody goes to the doctor and they're like, oh, I have like migraines, right? These are just things that are not in the mainstream. And I think what coaching allows for is a place for people to be heard, seen, in some sort of connection. A lot of, coaches create beautiful communities where, they do have women groups or, just men groups. And it's a way for people to kind of feel like they're a part of something. Like our human need to be connected is very real. And I think modern day society is only putting a bigger divide in that. I think technology has done a number on that. Obviously, COVID did a number on that. Mm-hmm. There's beautiful perks and whatnot to like working from home, but not being in simply like an office setting with other people and, hugging somebody good morning or, sitting, having coffee with somebody. A lot of that is, I think, maybe not taken for granted, but people didn't necessarily know how that was serving them. And then it kind of got all stripped away. And like, how do we find a way to bring it back in a sense?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%.
Yes. And I think too, as far as, what we're able to bring clients or even, convey over social media and convey in a newsletter, right? Which is kind of what you're doing right now. It's really just all about, here's the knowledge, here's the space for you to take your health and your life into your own hands. And you can do that. We kind of, before we signed on, we were talking a little bit about self-worth and, feeling that for ourselves, but then also instilling that in our clients. And based on kind of what we've already talked about, I would love to know what kind of like that means to you. Like, what is self-worth? Is that something that you've kind of brought along your journey and you're still kind of working on at this point?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think it's a lifelong process because there are so many systems that really chip away at our sense of self-worth. And earlier we were talking about just the education system and the school system. And I reflect on the ways in which my natural curiosities were really I don't want to say silenced because it wasn't quite that, but the sort of knowledge that had a lot of value is like, math and like how many dates can you memorize? And like I remember taking standardized tests when I was in third grade. Like, why are we doing all of this? I really, in hindsight, I'm like, wow, this really just degraded my self-worth over the years. As you know, I wasn't the best test taker, especially when it came to something like math. But I was so fascinated by like biology. I remember in fourth grade, I just took it upon myself to memorize all of the bones in a horse's body. But like, what points or gold stars did that give me? None. And yeah, over the years, I really just got this idea, as you know, most and everyone does, is that your curiosity is not valuable, your creativity is not valuable, and you have to be you have to look this way or behave this way in order to have a sense of safety and love and I like identity in the world. And it became so clear the ways in which that conditioning was limiting me. Like I mentioned, this podcast that I attempted, and I have so much compassion for myself around that. But in that process, like all of this perfectionism came up, and it started to be a huge source of stress for me, which everyone listening knows like is really not supportive of health and just happiness. And I think we all have these things that we want to do, whether it be a health goal or something else. But this conditioning around, you know, our sense of value and worth can sort of muddy and confuse. Trying to like wrap up this thought. Muddy and confuse just like our intentions and like how we're able to successfully carry those things out.
Yes. Yeah, I completely agree. And I think the perfectionism ties into the self-worth, because like if we just do it the right way, then we'll get the gold star. If we can just like take the test and perform well on the test, then we're like a good student. I mean, I've been homeschooling my kids. I have an 8 and a 6-year-old for this reason, because like, I feel like, especially at a young age, like that's when you should just be curious about like, who am I? What do I like? What makes me feel like I'm confident in my own skin versus somebody else telling me like, this will mean you are good enough. Like if you can get 100 on this test, then like you're one of the smartest kids in the class, right? But a lot of kids just like go through like this angst of memorization and regurgitation. And then like they get out of school and they're like, wait a minute, I don't even know who I am or what I like, and that can happen after college. Also love the point that you made about kind of going back to the podcast of like the perfectionism and the self-worth, because I think that also can be incredibly beneficial. So not only do we have to kind of somewhat let that go from a coaching aspect and from a position of, you know, holding space for a client to find their own path in healing and wellness, but I've had clients who I've told them like, just stop. Like, I don't want you doing nutrition anymore. We're stopping the supplements. I want you stopping exercising, because they are literally doing everything so perfectly and they're still not getting better, that I'm like, this is the problem. You are actually doing all of the things and you are clinging to this perfection, and you're so mad that it's not working because you're being so, quote, perfect, right? I have clients be like, I was perfect all week and I didn't lose any weight. I'm like, okay, well, let's back up. And I just have them, I'm like, now we need to sit with what it means to kind of let go of some of this control and some of this identity to, I will fix this. This is like, I'm going to control this. I'm going to fix this. I am not good enough until I lose the 20 pounds, because sometimes that's the energetic hold that it has on them. And that's why they haven't been able to let go of the weight, because quite literally all they're doing is holding on to so tight, right? And their body's just acting accordingly. And oftentimes I just love that you brought up school, because oftentimes those are patterns that are deeply rooted in childhood.
Mm-hmm.
This was when I acted this way and did everything just so, that's when I got the most love. And children are really smart. They just need love and safety. So they act accordingly. And what gives them love and safety, they do more of. And what doesn't, maybe being loud, maybe being messy, maybe being too kind of all over the place and creative, doesn't get them the same love and safety. So they do less of that. And then all of a sudden, you're just in this place where you're kind of holding on to perfectionism, and that is tied to your self-worth.
Yeah. And we lose all authenticity there. And that, I've really been learning and understanding how vulnerability and authenticity are so important for connection. I launched this podcast and I was like, it's going to be great. And then I realized, oh, it has to be perfect. And then it wasn't me. And then I didn't feel connected to what I was saying at all. And, it just is it can be a huge barrier to the real medicine, which is connection to ourselves and our inherent worth. And I just think about, I've also had a journey with perfectionism as it relates to my health and doing all the right things and, taking all the supplements and like my microbiome is perfect. Why am I still having these symptoms? Quote unquote perfect. Like obviously there's so much stress involved there, and that can lead to SIBO and things. And then you find out when you do lab testing, blah, 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 blah. That's another conversation that I'm sure everyone would be super geeked out about. But I see a lot of people on social media and it's like, I'm only as good as my gut microbiome, or like I had this sort of like savior mentality. Yeah. One of the big drivers for me and why I've been so curious about health my whole life is because I grew up in the Midwest, and, here the standard American diet is what everyone eats. And I definitely saw how that impacted my family. And my dad had a long journey with heart disease, and that turned into diabetes. And then eventually he got lung cancer. And my sense of worth was like, if I could only save my dad, like then I would be like that's my value. And in that process with him, he passed in May of 2020. And in his last few months, I really realized like, wow, this is not about saving this man's life. And I think this is important to remember as health professionals. Like there is wisdom in every experience, and like success doesn't have to look like saving someone's life. Even it can just be like giving them love and compassion in a time where they need it. And I even reflect back on my experience with my dad and how my perfectionism sort of got in the way of that, when really, he didn't need a health coach at that stage. Like he really just needed a daughter and a loving presence. And I think, that's just something that we should all keep in mind. We've been talking about connection has sort of been a theme. And
that, thank you for sharing that. It's so, when you can see it, that's so close, right? So close to home. I mean, it's your dad. And being able to kind of look back on that and sharing it with other coaches, because I couldn't agree more, right? The information's out there. I mean, so many people know what foods are good for them and what foods aren't. So many people know that they should be exercising, but what sets things apart, right? Feeling like you just have someone in your corner. There's a connection of, I'm here for you, and I'm holding this space for you to do this because I believe in you, and I would love for you to believe in yourself in a sense, right? And just being there. Sometimes just knowing somebody is there for you is what so many people need, because it's what I believe has been so much lost in our society. But so beautiful that you're able to look back on that experience and see that.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. I think this ability to just be with is something that we've lost. Like we're always trying to fix something. But what would it look like to just accept, like, yeah, I have some acne, or yeah, I have a little weight to lose. Like, it's totally like the desire to change those things is like totally like innocent. And like, of course, everyone wants to feel good and confident, but what would it look like to just accept that that's there? And like, can you still love yourself and like understand my worth is not connected to the way that I look or the words that I say or the impact that I make? Like, am I feeling joyful? Am I able to show up in a loving way? I think stripping everything back, like helping people remember that, is the most transformational kind of medicine that we could offer. And IHP, like, we're not healing, or it's not quote unquote medicine, but you know what I mean?
Yeah, I completely agree. A part of my path, which I've shared on here too before, is I had so much like weight that I couldn't get off. I felt like really just like stuck and inflamed. And people would always say to me, like, oh my God, how did you like lose weight? I don't even actually remember the things that I did to get healthier. The only thing that I did was I worked on myself. I simply started to love and accept myself with the help of a coach, of course, in a way that allowed my body to feel safe enough to do anything but stay in survival mode. I mean, I was just in massive survival mode. Your body doesn't heal and doesn't exude health or anything when it's in constant survival mode, or it's stuck in a place of fear or sadness, or all of those things. And so I simply just started to work on my emotional and nervous system regulation, and like everything else just fixed itself, truly. Like I didn't start eating more kale and I wasn't dieting. And I see people all the time, like they get into relationships and they just, they feel this sense of like love and connection, and all of a sudden, like their 30 pounds disappears. It's a very, I think, important message for people to understand that it goes far beyond, right, the things that you need to do. And I think, we've been talking a whole lot about just the connection and the self-love of what would it mean if I didn't actually lose any of this weight or none of this acne ever disappeared? How could I sit in this place and find my true worth beyond any of that? And that's where like the magic happens, in my opinion.
Yeah. Ironically. Yeah. Like you shared with your journey, some people call this the paradox of transformation. Is like, as soon as you accept it, then it can change. And yeah, other teachers and mentors of mine have said, like, whatever you judge, you keep. And, what you resist persists, and all of those quotes that we like to throw around. But it's so true, unfortunately, because it's not always easy to just sit with the parts of ourselves that we don't necessarily like. But as soon as we can just like give them the compassion that they're looking for, then everything changes in all areas of our life: health, career, relationships. And, that's a whole system in itself, all like the interplay between all of those things.
Yes. Yeah. And I love that you said the parts of yourself that you don't love and giving them compassion rather than figuring out like, what do I do with this? How do I like move? Right. We're as human beings, we all have things that are not our quote unquote best self, or we have parts of, but how do we find a way to love that just as much as the other parts? That's truly, I think, what it's about. And that's real, self-worth and compassion. And yeah. And I think we just show up in a way, the people who I know who are the most understanding coaches, the most kind of understanding moms, the people who show up in the world as the best version of themselves typically can see that in themselves, right? When we're super self-critical of ourselves and super down. And that's what we kind of project out and see in others. And others can feel that, right? We're just all energetic beings. And I think when we talk about coaching, I think as coaches, we show up better when we love ourselves better, and where we find our own self-worth, we're able to help and foster that in our clients as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I surprised myself when I was taking IHP. I didn't realize that the stress and the mindset and the emotions would be actually what I would kind of spend a lot of my time diving into. And I definitely felt resistance to those things initially when going through the modules. But now I see, and there's so much research coming out about the impact of these, different kinds of traumas, and just the real power of our mind. Like, it's so powerful. The most powerful thing we have is right between our ears.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. I could not agree more. What I already shared this quote on an episode, but Mark Hyman, oh my gosh, he recently said, I think your mind is the most potent pharmacy or something like that. But yeah,
it's so true. Yeah, your mind and even your breath, like you can change the pH of your blood with your breath.
yes,
Like, we have so much healing power just inside of ourselves. It's not, yes, what's on our plate is like, that's so huge, but let us not forget the power that we have. And yeah, there are people like Joe Dispenza. I don't know if you're familiar with his work, but yeah, it's really amazing. I'm really excited to see where all of this emerging science and these emerging ideas take us. And my only hope, I think a lot of the wellness industry, and I think IHP is really showing a new way in this, is just transitioning from this like fear-based change. It's like the Marianne Williamson. I'm throwing around all these names. I have so many people I look up to. Stephen Cabral is definitely one of them. Julia is one of them. I feel so connected to you. But Marianne Williamson, she talks about this transition from fear to love. And I like
the root of it all.
Honestly, in like all the areas, it's like, yeah, I have I felt the most healthy, just like changing what I do from this place of like, I really respect myself and I want to feel good in my body, as opposed to, oh, I have this horrible acne and like, what are other people going to think of me? Like, it's just a very different way of being. And I think if we can just help people move from fear to love, like the whole world will change.
Yes. Yes. Because when we're operating from a place of fear, it's a place of lack and scarcity. And like, what if this acne never disappears? But like, if we're, approaching it from a place of love, it's okay, I have acne. Okay. What else? Okay. I still have a heart. I still have a soul. I still have a brain. I have all of these things that make me lovable, regardless of what my face looks like, and make me worthy to be a health professional. I've talked to so many women who are like, oh, it's so hard. Like, I know all of this stuff, but like clients, I get worried the clients are going to show up and be like, she has acne. Like, how healthy could she be? Right. That's a fear mindset, but like a love mindset allows our body truly to relax into the place of I'm okay. There's nothing wrong. There's nothing to be quote unquote scared of. I am not lacking anything except for your one layer shedding of your skin away from a clearer face, right? Like that can change. Your heart doesn't change, your brain doesn't change, your soul doesn't change, in the sense of like it's there, right? We can create thoughts and whatnot, but it's the outer layer of a system inside that is worth so much more. And you're right. I think fear just drives lack, and love, drives abundance, and all of the things that make us feel like we're here, meant to be here.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And stepping into joy, that's something that I realized I haven't really allowed myself to do over the years. Like, if it's not related to learning so that I can apply it to a career and make money out of it, it's like, then it's not worth my time. But really, like, I just played guitar for like an hour last night. I hadn't done that in 5 years, and I felt so nourished by that. And yeah, that time doesn't really have a payoff. And there are so many reasons we why we place so much importance on, squeezing as much value out of our time as we can. But yeah, just connecting to what brings you joy, what makes you feel happy. um when my dad, it was his last week of life earthside, and he and my mom asked him, like, do you need something? And she was thinking, like, do you need water, or do you need jello, or something like that? And he just said, be happy. And that was his request. And um yeah, I really needed to hear that, because for so long I placed my happiness on like him having more time on earth, or like me being able to invest in, like, I wanted to buy him a sauna or like all these things, but really all he wanted was just like for his loved ones to be happy. And um yeah, whenever I take an hour and like choose to do something that feels really nourishing, I'm like honoring him in that way. And um it's really so simple. It's just like, be happy.
Yeah.
We make it
Um,
so complicated.
I know. And we can think that we can get in the mindset of we have to be doing something that feels big and, you know, um, productive to be serving or to be giving someone something of value. And everybody that watches this podcast knows that I cry all the time. Um, but I am sitting here with tears in my eyes because, like, also for like a man to say that, right? Like, who, like,
Mhm.
in that masculine energy, and to just for him to probably he wanted to give you permission to, like, I know I'm not like at that point, did he know he was going to be passing? Yeah,
Yeah.
like, and so he's basically saying, like, "I give you permission to be happy." It's like, that's what I want you to do. Um, like,
Mhm.
what better gift?
Mhm. I have so many full body goosebumps.
Um, but truly, and that it's, I think we grasp at all of, like, what would make us happy. I was recently just having this conversation with a friend. She was saying, like, "Oh, I'm unhappy in my marriage, and like I just don't feel like fulfilled." And she was kind of saying how, like, she found this other guy who, like, was making her feel a certain way. I was like, "Oh, that's a trap." Like, stop right there. There is nothing about him that will continue to make you feel happy. That is all. My dad has done lots of therapy in his life, always says happiness is an inside job. You, when the second you start searching outside, that's when you get in trouble. Because finding what makes you tick internally and honoring that, music, dance, like, there's just so much that our culture has lost that, um, I feel like it's the only way to fill ourselves up. And when we grasp for other things to numb us, and that makes us happy, or to find people to talk to us a certain way, and that makes us happy, right? Like, those, that's not happiness. Happiness is found inside.
Mhm.
Sustainable
Yeah,
happiness.
yeah. Insourcing versus outsourcing, right? Yeah, I
Yes.
totally agree. Yeah, happiness is an inside job for sure. And I recently heard another mentor I'm so grateful for. Also, this is just an aside. I think something else that we've lost is just learning from people who've walked the path before us, and like really honoring the wisdom of, our elders. And I'm just so grateful for the people that have really influenced me in those ways, the real influencers. And my dad definitely was one of them. And um But anyway, one of them recently said, what was that? I wrote it down.
The things that we write down, those are always worth the most, right?
No, I can't find the note. It's not right by me, but it was basically like, um, don't settle for anything less than what you're already giving yourself. And the essence of it is like, she also said this, I can guarantee that I'll help you find the love of your life, and it's you.
Yep.
And that is the most empowering thing that anyone could ever come to realize, is like, all you need is, and it's so cheesy, it's so cliche, but cliches are cliches for a reason. It's like, all you need is love, and we have to give it to ourselves first. And then that creates bridges for connection and really just amplifies love.
Yeah. Because
Anyway.
it's the only constant that we could truly rely on. I mean, there's parent love, right? There's relationship love, there's friend love, but the one thing that truly could never be taken from you is the love you're able to give yourself. Everything else could be fleeting. Um, and so yeah, I love that. That yeah, we are really our one true love. And it sounds, like you said, cliche and cheesy, but for people who are able to do that and foster that, I think all other relationships take on a different meaning, and they're able to become deeper and more connected because you're not clinging to that need for it to fulfill the kind of like gap in you in a sense.
Yeah.
It can happen with coaching client relationships in the sense of, I am attached to your outcome so that your outcome then stays attached to how good you think I am at my job, right? Which I think that kind of like brings our topic full circle of there's oftentimes ways that if we're not feeling worthy of ourselves, we're not feeling connected, we're not feeling love, that we can kind of get in this, trap might be the wrong word, but of
Yeah, an ego trap for sure.
yeah, the relationship of I'm only as good as your results and your feelings about me are, and that doesn't serve the coach or the client well.
hmm Totally. Yeah. We don't want to create codependent relationships, even, well, in any sense, but yeah, ultimately we just want to empower people to um yeah, hear their own wisdom and really connect to themselves.
Yes. Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree more. Thank you so much for being a guest on the Integrative Health Coach Success Podcast. This is such a wonderful interview. I feel so lucky to have met you and had this conversation, and I hope our listeners enjoyed it as much as I did. So thank you for being here.
Thank you, Julia. My pleasure.
Soon. Thanks, Lydia.
Thank you.